Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for clicking on the video. Today I am going to put the theory to the test. I have made a few videos about bend testing arrows and how I think it's an easier and more effective way to set up arrows instead of nock tuning them. Nock tuning can take a long time. So I figured I'm going to do both. This might take a little bit. So here's the plan. I've got this set of gold tip warriors. I just got these cut and squared. The intent is they're going to be built to match this arrow. This is my hunting arrow for my Mission MXR. Little heavier build. They're going to have the 100 grain brass inserts in the front. But I figured since I got this fresh set of arrows, I've got the original aluminum inserts. I'm just going to hot glue those in. I'm going to tune my Elite to a bare shaft for these, and then I'm going to go shoot them through paper and see out of a dozen arrows that I just do the bend test on and mark them and shoot them through, how many are going to shoot a bullet hole first try. I want to see if it works. I'm confident that most of them will. There might be one or two that's off, but we'll find out. So let's get these points in and get the paper set up and we'll go shoot them. I've never really used hot melt before, but I was watching a video of a guy and he had his hot melt stick melted and dropped into a bolt. Well, I've kind of done the same thing. I found a little washer thing that I just melted one in and stuck it in there. That way you can stand it up when you're done with it. That way you're not dropping it down on your work surface, your desk, your table, whatever it may be. So we'll see. We'll see how well this works. Like I said, never really used it before. Well, that was mostly painless. Now you just got all these little glue donuts around. You just kind of got to roll them off. Man, this is pretty slick, actually. I chose to get the hot melt because I know I need to take these out because I'm going to put those other inserts in there. So, yeah, it's the first time I've really used it. So hopefully that makes them easy to get them out when it's time. And we'll see how well this holds up on the target. Maybe I'll just hot melt the big inserts in versus gluing them in. For those who have not seen my other videos on this, I'll give you a quick explanation. Arrows, even though they look consistent, they tend to have a weak side and a stiff side. So what this does is it helps us try to figure out which way the arrow wants to bend. And it usually bends to the stiff side. So I've got the glue in point, or the point that I just glued in on that end. And then I just take another point in an insert that's not glued. That's key. Don't glue this in. And I'm just dropping it into the shaft on the other end. So I've got 2 points. And then I'm going to put it in this clamp. I'm going to put a little pressure on it, and the arrow is going to bend one way or another. Typically it bends to the weak side, and I'm going to check it a few times, make sure it's consistently bending to the weak side, and I'm going to do that with all the arrows. The theory is if they're all bending the same way, when you go shoot them out of the bow, same thing, they're all going to bend the same way. They all should tune almost identically. So let's zoom in. I'll show you kind of how I have this set up. So this thing is nothing special. This is just a Bessie bar clamp I picked up at Home Depot. It's on a 48-inch rod or pipe, and I've taken the rubber faces off, and then I've put a pinhole right there. There's also one on that side, and I did everything I could to make sure that was perfectly centered. So what I'm going to end up doing is when I put the arrow in here, I'm going to put that point perfectly there, and same thing up here. I'm going to put that point right in that pinhole. And from here, I'm just going to add a little pressure. Now, please understand, we are not trying to do Gold Tip's torture test and trying to break this thing in half. We're just putting a little bit of pressure on it to see which way it wants to bend. So let me demonstrate. I usually am looking for something on the label to reference. So first off, I found that doing it vertically does make a little bit of a difference. I know gravity, it doesn't seem like gravity would play a role, but I've done this on some other arrows and it seemed to make a little bit of a difference. So I typically have it somewhat hanging vertically to get rid of that variable. So all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add just a little bit of pressure and see which way this arrow wants to bend. Keeps trying to move. I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but it's kind of bending out and towards me a little bit. So it's kind of lining up on, almost right on where it says warrior on that side. Now the way I test this is I'm going to release the pressure. I'm going to, okay, apparently my light's freaking out. Let me change the battery on that. All right, battery swapped. So yeah, after you push that initial test, I'm looking for something that it's lined up on. It looked like it lined up right here at the bottom of where it said warrior is where it was bending away from. The key here is you got to make sure you release all the pressure off of it so that you're not holding a bend into it. So I'm going to put that lined up with me right here. In theory, when I press this, it should bend that direction. Let's see. A little bit of pressure. Yep, it kind of bent that way, maybe a little bit back. So it's kind of lining up right on warrior. I'm going to just test it again. I'm going to spin it this way. It should kind of come back to me at this point. For the most part, it did. So I've got a pretty consistent bend on what it's doing. So I'm going to put it right there, and it should bend directly into the pipe. And it did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little marker, it's just a Sharpie, and I'm just going to put a mark up here. And what that mark is telling me is that when I put my knock in, I want that mark facing up. So let's get you up here close. So there's my mark. It's bending directly into the pipe. If we stand over here, you can see that it's bowing a little bit in. You can see I'm not bending it a lot. It's just a little bit, because that's about all the bend. That's probably more than it will get coming out of the bow. So I'm not trying to break the arrow. I'm just trying to flex it just a little bit. And then I'm marking the top, or what I'm going to have as the top, when I knock it into the bow. All right, with that quick little explanation, I'm going to run through and do the rest of these really quick, and then we'll get over to the paper. They've all got their Sharpie marks. All right, so now that they're all marked, where's it at? Right there. So now that it's got the mark on there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my nocks back in an orientation so that the line will be up when I knock it into the bow. So what that does is as the arrow comes out of the bow, the arrow wants to bend down. And that's kind of what the compound bows are doing to the arrows anyways. And that's my theory, is that if you let the arrow bend the same direction the bow wants to bend it, nothing's fighting each other. They're both doing the same thing, and it makes tuning them easier. Now, I've become so confident in this method that if this is how I was going to build them up, I would just fletch them. I wouldn't even worry about shooting these things through paper. I would pick one that I have as a designated bear shaft that I tune the bow to. But other than that, I wouldn't shoot the other 11 through paper. They all seem to fly great all the time, every time I've tried this. But let's put it to the test. I've got 12 arrows. I'm going to number them so we can keep track of them. I'm going to pick one at random. That'll be number 1. I'm going to adjust my bow so that it's shooting that through paper, shooting a perfect bullet hole. And then we'll shoot the other 11 and see if they shoot bullet holes. All right, I've got shaft number 1 here. And what we're going to do is we're going to shoot this through paper, and I'm going to tune the bow to this arrow. Now, I don't mind taking this bow out of tune because it's getting a new set of arrows here in a little bit anyways. So that's why I'm okay playing with this one. I really don't want to mess with my other bow because it's tuned and broadhead tuned already. So this one's easy to adjust. I'm going to mess with this one. So here we go. Shaft number 1. I've got my mark on top. I don't know if you guys can see that from there. I'm going to punch this through paper, and we'll make some adjustments till it's shooting a clean hole. Big thing I've found doing this, especially on this Elite, I've really got to make sure my hand position's right. If I get a little sloppy on my hand position, these holes get really wild. Well, the initial hole is not terrible. It's kind of just straight up and down. That's an easy fix. Kind of reiterates what I'm getting at, is that I had the There is no left and right tear because it was tuned the same way to the other arrows that I've been shooting out of that bow. Just need to make a little up and down, probably because the spine's a little stiffer and a little heavier arrow. All right, we'll see if I went too far on that. Shot number 2. All right, looks like I only got about half of that vertical out of there, so I need to probably do a little bit more. All right, I'm guessing this one's gonna be really, really close. Looks good. Well, that's awful pretty. I think I'll shoot a couple more just to confirm, but I think that's about there. A little bit of a left tear, that might be me. Let's try it again. So that one tore just a hair right, which probably tells me I'm adding a little torque to the bow. Let's do one more. That one's pretty dang close. Now, if anything, this kind of highlights exactly my point. Nock tuning is tedious and it takes forever. And if you're gonna do this with a dozen arrows, for us average guys, by the time you get halfway through it, A, you're tired because you're probably not shooting enough to shoot that many arrows non-stop. Because if you're really gonna go through and twist the nock and shoot every arrow at the 8th position, you're gonna be shooting 80 to 100 arrows till you figure these out. That's a lot of shooting for one guy. Most guys aren't shooting 100 arrows a day. And then for guys like me, I'm not a great shot. I know that. I'm aware. I accept that. So this kind of highlights my point, is that these 4, I haven't touched the bow outside of just me shooting it, and my hand torque is probably just messing with it just a little bit. That's why I think the bend test is effective. So let's run through them really quick though and just see how they are. I'll pull this up and we'll go through 1 through 12 and shoot them, and we'll just see. There might be a couple I might reshoot because it might be my hand torque, but we'll try it. Here we go. All right, we're assuming we're tuned. Off of the bear shaft, off of number 1. I'm going to shoot it again right now. Arrow number 1. Sucked. All right, the first 6 we got bullet hole, bullet hole, bullet hole, big tear, bullet hole. That was a little wide, but basically a bullet hole. Kind of slapped my jacket on 4. I'm going to pull 4 and reshoot it. No, that's an identical tear. So maybe I need to work with that one just a little bit more. All right, the next 6, we basically got bullet hole, bullet hole, bullet hole, bullet hole. 11 kind of ripped. 12 ripped just a little bit. I'm going to pull them, shoot 11 again, and see if that was me or if it's the arrow. All right, having reshot 11 and 12, those are a bullet hole. That's a bullet hole. So I'm going to go get number 4, and we're going to play with it and see what's going on with number 4. All right, first thing we're going to do here is pull the nock, and we're going to put it back on here and just see if maybe I mismarked this to begin with. So my original mark is right there. So if I twist that, that should bend directly into the clamp. That's what it's doing. Okay. It's not me. This should bend that direction. Let's twist it and see what it does. Yep, okay. No, it's bending consistently, so that's not the problem. I wonder if it's the Nock. Let me grab one of these other Nocks that I have here and just throw it in there. So I've just got another Nock. This is just another GT Nock. It's just one of the blue ones. We'll put this in. Let's go shoot it and see if that solved it or not. No, it's still doing the same thing it was doing up here. So let's Nock tune it now. All right, I'm going to twist it. I'm going to twist the arrow clockwise 90 degrees. Nope, still tearing left. So now I'm going to twist it 90 degrees counterclockwise. So now my indication is pointing left on the arrow. Oh, there it is. So that shot almost perfect bullet hole. All right, so what's the takeaway? Out of a dozen arrows, they all shot bullet holes except for one. And I had to turn the Nock 90 degrees to get it to shoot a bullet hole. What does that tell me? That tells me this method is insanely effective because it's not like these are match grade arrows. These are the Gold Tip Warriors. These are the cheapest arrow that you can buy from a major manufacturer that is spined enough for adult bows. These are 300 spine arrows. $58 a dozen. Cut, squared, bend tested, and then 11 of 12 shot bullet holes. I've watched videos of other guys that are buying really, really expensive arrows, and they'll go out and they, whatever method they're using to get their arrow set up, and they fletch them, and then they go out and they shoot them on a target at 50, 60 yards, and by the time they're done, they have a couple, I guess the term is a coal arrow, you know, arrows that they're just like, oh, these are junk arrows, they don't fly right. And they're buying $120, $150 arrows. 58 bucks, folks. 58 bucks, and only one of them didn't fly using this method. I call it a win. I honestly do. It's just too easy. It's simple and it's effective. And if I was out there and I found one that wasn't grouping with the rest, I would set it aside, or maybe I'd come in and do exactly what I did with this one arrow. I wouldn't waste my time doing that with all of these. Thanks for coming along, guys. I'm not trying to convince you that you need to change your method. I'm just saying there's more than one way to skin a cat, and especially for us average guys, us normal guys that don't shoot every day, that can't shoot every day, that, you know, we're not buying the most expensive bows, we're not buying the most expensive arrows. You can still get these kind of arrows to shoot well if you incorporate this method into your process when you're setting up your bows and stuff. Thanks for watching. This series is going to continue. I'm actually going to fletch a few of these up, and I'm going to go shoot them out of that Elite and see if it likes the stiffer arrows. I've been shooting 400 spines out of it. I want to shoot these 300s and just see if my scores at 50 yards improve a little bit. Thanks for coming along. We'll see you on the next one.